Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Conversation with Friends. And that's my friend of the week, right? Rupert Meghnot. And so for those of you who do not know who he is, he has been featured as 2019's Global Game Industry 50 over 50. He's had a lifetime's worth of experience as an entrepreneur, and he was featured by Orlando Business Journal as 40 under 40, the CXO of Burnout Game Ventures, one of the members for the advisory board of Orlando Entrepreneurs and Ideas for Us, a mentor at the Starter Studio, and co-organizer of 1 Million Cups in Orlando. And your life has been very eclectic and with a lot of successes and also some whoops, and which I think is what makes it
A
really
lot of whoops, yeah.
which I think that's why we want to hear your story. Is it's not very interesting when somebody just keeps going up. It's much more interesting when a person navigates. So can you share with us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and so we can get to know you?
I'm just like everybody else. I'm, an eternal spiritual being in an immortal shell, just like everybody else. And been on this journey for quite a while, and was fortunate enough to find my purpose fairly early on in life, and I've been trying to stick with that. Can't say it's been the most. It's been an interesting journey, I'll say that.
Please share what you mean by your purpose, because it sounds so interesting. I've been sticking with it. Can you share with us what is it?
Well, my family's Baha'i, which is very, very few people know about it, but it was a faith, not a religion, that was created in Iran in 1844.
Wow.
And tenets of the faith, keep in mind, again, 1844 Iran, things they believed in 12 things, including the inherent equality of men and women, science and religion being two sides of the same coin, everybody should have a compulsory education, and so on and so forth. And one of the tenets of the faith is don't believe necessarily in blindly anybody's word for anything. The leader of our faith says, hey, don't take my word for it. Do your own research and make up your own mind. Okay. If you want to be a Christian, be a good Christian. You want to be a Muslim, be a good Muslim. So I spent 7 years studying every religion, from the time I was 12 to the time I was 17, and studying every religion that I could possibly, reading every Bible and Bhagavad Gita and, Quran, everything, going to every mosque and church and synagogue and everything, and meeting with people and everything. And then finally one night I was laying in bed and it just came to me, said, why am I here? I'm here to please God. Well, how do I please God? Well, I do that by helping my fellow man to the best of my ability.
Wow.
And then I thought, well, how do I do that? And it just said, help yourself to the best of your ability, because the more you help yourself, the more means you have with which you can help others. So
That. Wow. Well, with your resume, with a very decorated resume you've had, you certainly have done a lot,
is it
accomplished
that
a
pretty,
lot.
really?
Yeah. Well, if you look at that, what's especially impressive is not just what you did based on what you listed, but
No.
what the honors you have received, the recognition other people have given you because they see what you have created.
Hmm.
And a part of that is accomplishment. But another part of it, the accomplishment part definitely resonates with what you said about making the best of who you are, because
Yeah.
part of your purpose. But you can also see there's been a lot of contribution to the community. You didn't keep it to yourself. Like for instance, the programs, which is how we initially met,
Right.
and also the Million Cup. All those things are things you volunteer.
Yeah.
You do because you want to share your experiences to help other people to succeed. And I
Yeah.
found that to be really impressive. And I love the spiritual component. One of my favorite author is Michael Singer, and he
Hmm.
wrote The Untethered Soul. And I really, really love it. And The Untethered Soul, and he wrote a subsequent book. It's called The Surrender Experiment, which is in essence his autobiography.
Hmm.
And when he was doing his PhD, he realized all he wanted to do is sit under the tree and contemplate his navel.
Right, right.
And so he decided he didn't want to necessarily finish, and he just wants to live out this really spiritual life. And one thing led to
He had
another.
an Audi, that's why. Because if it was an innie, he would have been more contemplative. Yeah.
Right, exactly, right? And kind of like what you said, he discovered the journey is really about doing the best he can in who he is and follow the path from listening intensely.
Right.
So later on, he became the CEO of WebMD.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a lot to what you just shared, and it's really incredible. And I know your degree originally, the first degree you have for your bachelor's was in political science,
Right.
and you have done well academically, but at the same time you have also struggled with ADHD.
Mhm.
And you share a little bit with us on the journey, the process, and how you navigated through all that, and how that has not necessarily hindered you, but maybe have helped you.
Well, I didn't even really. I suspected something was odd all my life, and then when is it was like 15 years ago or so. On a whim, I went to a specialist and went through the interview, and they said, "Oh yeah, not only do you have ADD, but you've got ADHD." And then me, I went to 4 other people, including a clinical study, and they all said, "Oh yeah, you got it good." And a lot of people who don't understand ADHD will never understand it, right? They're like, "Oh, I forget things when I walk into a room. Oh, I do this and I do." No, they have no clue, no clue. And so in any case, the things I like about it are the creative aspects to it, because when your mind is constantly racing so much and so many things are in there, you learn. And it's like, I can talk more about other coping mechanisms, but that base really helped me understand my purpose. But it's just that so many things are bouncing around, you got to be quick, right? And they're all creative. And so if you're trying to solve a problem, for example, all these things start popping into your head. You got to reach out, boom, you grab it really quick and look at it and say, "Oh, that's a good idea," right? But then with ADHD, you just spit it out, right? So all my people, I keep telling them, "Okay, guys, that's what I do. I just spit things out without thinking too much about them. I do think about them, and basically it comes down to, I'm going to say it, and if you don't like it, tough, what." So in any case, so they're used to it and all that, but they know where the ideas are coming from and so forth. The other thing is that even from a very early age, I realized that there was such a huge propensity for chaos, right? And the best thing to do to prevent chaos is to plan.
Okay.
And so I remember when my mom passed, and my ex-wife and I were going through boxes of stuff from her, and she goes, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "What?" She says, you were a project manager at 8 years old." I'm like, "What?" And she gives me this letter that I wrote to her. She used to put me on a bus in Detroit, and I would take the bus to Ann Arbor, Michigan by myself, and go to my uncle's house, and he had 4 daughters, and I would spend the weekend with them, and then they'd put me on the bus and send me back. And so one of my cousins had a birthday party, and I planned the whole thing.
Wow, at 8.
At 8, planned the whole thing, created the invitations, sent out the invitations, hired the clown, bought all the balloons and all the other stuff and everything, made sure everybody's shoes were by the door, all organized and everything like that. And I'm just reading it going, holy crap,
Wow.
And so project management became a real, just it's a harmony.
I love
and
that.
with my soul, right? It was
Mhm.
just harmony. And, when I started, I took a job in the early 90s at Martin Marietta doing project management for them. And yeah, it was supposed to be a 6-month contract. And 2.5 years later, they're like, Rupert, we really want to employ you. And I'm like, no, I'm not crazy about the environment, but thank you very much. But in any case, and then I, started helping entrepreneurs and startups,
Mhm.
trying to get them to understand the importance of project management.
I love
You
that.
know, one of my favorite sayings was by Sir John Avery Jones, who said, "Planning is an unnatural act.
It really is. But,
People hate to plan, right?"
right?
He says the wonderful thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise, whereas the opposite, the alternative is failures preceded. If you plan, failure is preceded by a period of worry and despair. And when you think about it, and then he says, fail to plan, plan to fail. And when you think about it, is if you've got time to worry or despair about something, you've got time to fix it. So at the very least, even if you have a crappy plan, if you've got some time to prevent failure from happening, then that's a win. That's a huge win, right?
I love that.
And the problem is that the vast majority of startups fail because they don't survive their first pivot.
Can you explain what a pivot is for those who may not understand what that means?
A pivot is basically you come up with an idea for something, right? And then you have to figure out some way to validate it, right?
Okay.
In other words, so for example, a big, huge study was done a year and a half ago of companies that have received at least $2 million in venture capital. Now, understand the context here. These are companies that supposedly the smartest people in the room have invested in after looking into them, looking at everything else and saying, yeah, I can make money by giving this guy $2 million.
Right.
Okay. And then they looked at the ones that failed, over almost 300 of them. And the number one reason why companies failed, 42%, was that there was no market for their product or service.
Right.
I was just like,
so
how could you possibly figure that out after you've invested $2 million into them? It's like,
now, do you think there was no market for the initial ideas, or do you think the ideas were valid, but somehow in the development of the products they become disconnected with the market?
There's an element of that, of course, but so the pivot basically is they come up with an original idea, and then they're focused and that's the other problem, is they're focused on the product and not the process.
I think that's so important. That is something I see all the time with whether it's entrepreneurs, musicians, or even students.
Right.
And I think this is where I want to ask you a question. One of my favorite thing in my life is I employ the bullet journal method, which is developed by a gentleman who is a lot like you. He has pretty serious ADHD. So he was a planner since he was a young child. His mother found those old notes of him planning out things to basically develop. A lot of ADHD people are incredibly brilliant, and they found and discovered coping mechanism that allow their mind to just work. And and of course he was right. Of course he was in marketing, and then he went into app development. Similar path, right? And so he was very familiar with the agile methodology in software development, and so there's some of that in that. But one thing I have wondered is how important it is for someone with that kind of incredible mind that also has a lot of chatters to have that space to intentionally keep the space, to have the space for the sandbox.
It's actually a match made in heaven. The thing is that 99.9% of people in the world who call themselves project managers don't know jack about project management. Okay. I used to teach PMP
Yes. Yes.
I taught it at the master's degree level, right? And it's like, so somebody comes up to me with a PMP certification, project management professional, and they're beating their chest. Oh, I'm a PMP, and I said, oh yeah, well, so how do you gather your NWEs? And they're like, what? Which is like the foundation of project management is understanding all your stakeholders' needs, wants, and expectations. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how can you even create a project without knowing that stuff? And they're like, what? And it's just like, people really don't understand project management. We're all project managers.
Right.
When you put your clothes on this morning, that was a project. Right? When you brush your teeth, that was a project, right? When you drive to work, that's a project. Okay. Right. It has initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. It's right. all projects do that.
Right.
However, when you're doing things like making a game or a movie or a rocket ship, right? there's levels of depth to the planning that's required in order for it to be successful.
Right. And I know you have worked a lot with companies to help them to move to the next step. And I think I read somewhere you helped 350 plus 400 different organizations and individuals in moving forward in those directions.
Actually,
yeah.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Who's known me for like 30 years. And he says, Rupert, he says, I saw that 350. And I said, yeah. And he says, dude, you've done that. You've done over 500 with 1 million cups in the last 4 years.
Wow.
He says, you've probably worked with thousands of startups. And I was like, I just picked the number,
Yeah. Could you briefly explain to those who don't know what 1 million cup is?
So 1 million cups is a program that was started by the Kauffman Foundation. The Kauffman Foundation is one of the largest nonprofit organizations on earth. But they're all entrepreneurial. So what they do is they support entrepreneurial education. They have thousands of awesome videos on YouTube on how to start a business and all that stuff, and how to present and how to pitch. And so 1 million cups is basically, I consider it to be an educational institution.
Okay.
Where every Wednesday morning, there's 180 places around the United States that an entrepreneur can come in and educate the audience for 6 minutes on their business idea. And then the audience spends 20 minutes educating the entrepreneur.
Okay, so maybe you can drop a link below, and because you're one of the co-founders for the Orlando chapter.
No, I'm not a co-founder. That was Ron Benziv and Daniel Shea.
Okay.
They brought it to Orlando back in September of 2013.
So you're a co-organizer, my mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was running it. Yeah.
Yes.
I took it over in 2016, I think it was.
Wow.
2016, and I ran it by myself for a year, and and did what I could to build it back up to what it should be. I was successful, and then the last few years, another couple had taken it over, and we're running with it, and now they just did another transition. So I've been on the board with these guys since then, and just trying to guide them and build it. But it's an awesome, if you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, there is no better educational opportunity to present your product or service to a group of other entrepreneurs, and you have no idea who's going to be in the room.
That's awesome. So if you could drop a link below so people can check it out, it'll be so awesome. Now, you talked so much about what you do for other people, which I think is the essence of who you are. I love to bring it back to who you are, what you do, and your current venture, which is the Burnout Game Ventures. Tell me what it is. Why did you pick the name, and what is it doing right now?
Well, to let me back it up just a little bit. So the reason why I'm passionate about entrepreneurship is because so much good in the world has come from it. Okay. Every single product you use that you touch in your entire life was created by an entrepreneur. Okay.
Right.
This mouse was created by an entrepreneur. This cup was created by an entrepreneur. The pen you write with was created. That lovely white brick background was created by an entrepreneur. Okay. And the thing is that, or ultimately started with an entrepreneur and got to that point, right? Even the big companies in the world. I mean, Apple,
Or even Zoom. We're on Zoom.
yeah,
Live to Facebook with just 2 tiers with a huge effort from people who.
yeah. I mean, Ford started in a garage, right? So it's like these, so in any case, I've been working. I started my first business in 20 doing political consulting, and sold it when I was 23, and then went into sales. I had a long journey, but I was following the opportunities, and so I've been working with so many entrepreneurs, and I've seen it all, right? And what, to me, if you're not like in the top 5% of humanity, and with characteristics of creativity, initiative, risk tolerance, and resilience, your journey to be a successful entrepreneur is going to be much more difficult. Okay. It's not that it's not going to happen, because that's where your resilience comes in. However, it's just, it's tough. It's really tough. And I've seen entrepreneurs who didn't plan, number one, who didn't have the risk tolerance, who didn't have the resilience. Creativity is in abundance. Everybody's got creativity. And, they fail. And I've seen divorces, bankruptcies, suicides. I mean, I've seen it all. And so my mission is to help people who are starting businesses avoid that by doing something really simple, which is get off your butt, don't be lazy, and listen to other people, especially those who've been there before, and do your homework, right? Which basically comes out to planning it the right way.
Okay.
So, 90% of companies that fail, of the 80% that fail in the first couple of years, they don't plan, or they don't plan sufficiently, right? 90% of those, of the 20% that do succeed, are the ones who do plan. Okay. And these are facts, and and you can read whatever survey or study you want, and they'll all support this. So I first got into the when I was at Martin Marietta, I got into VR.
Okay.
Helped start a company called Real 3D. If you go to the movie theater, you see the Real 3D there. There was an image generator company for Martin Marietta back then, and but I worked with them in a bunch of other projects, DARPA and all kinds of other stuff.
Right.
And so then started helping other people, and came up with my own idea in consumer electronics, tried to make that successful, and it wasn't, because it was primarily it was because of the big recession in '92.
Kind of like the pandemic now, right? It makes some certain industries just fall out, the bottoms fall out. You can't come.
Well, in '92, it was just as bad as what 2008 was. It just at the time for us, it was just as bad. So
Right.
it didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, so in any case, I can talk forever on all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm so curious about the Burnout Game Venture.
Right. So
because it's from what I understand, it is an incubator for gaming, right? For gaming, for people who want to develop their own companies and their own games. And tell us a little bit about that, and how did you come into that industry, and why do you want to help them? Because I know you were a
You dropped. I want to assume that it's still recording. So in any case, I did my first VR project for Martin Marietta back in, what was it, 89 or so. Oh, it dropped off. Start a new meeting? Question mark.
Hey, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. So, what I'd like to do, are we still live? We're still recording? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
For some
So you
reason, I
want me to
got
just
kicked out.
answer my question then, or well, that you asked?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And so go ahead, please.
Okay. So did the first VR project in like 89 at Martin Marietta, then in 95, and did a couple other projects. And then in 95, I started a motion simulation company, the simulators that move. And but going mainly at the location-based entertainment industry, so arcades, theme parks, family entertainment centers.
Okay.
So we had simulators that were fun, supposed to be fun experiences, and I had deals with Infogrames and Hasbro Interactive and other companies to license their games so that we had content for our sims. And I thought to myself, how hard could it be, right? So aside from being the preamble to a very comedic skit, I put together a team of, I did a little research, and I put together a team of 9 people, and we made a game in 6 months, and it took off. And then we made several games, and we're very successful with it. And then in 2002, I think it was, or 3, the Rosen College, or the Rosen School, was started at UCF on hospitality and tourism, and they asked me to help them out, and they asked me to teach a class. I had to teach a class. If I'm going to be working with them, I had to teach. So I taught a class on entertainment technology. That's a whole nother story. And then in 2008, Full Sail was starting their game design master's degree.
So you got into teaching.
And so they asked me to help out there, and so they asked me to teach project management to the students there, and it was the cornerstone class of the whole degree. I'm still in touch with most of my former students who have gone on to do amazing things in the game industry. Quite a few of them are actually working with me now, and so that's how I primarily got involved in it.
Wonderful.
I don't know, I keep going back to entertainment or amusement and things like that. I don't know why it's
maybe that's,
so in any case,
because it's all about fun,
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, maybe even prior to this discussion, that most entrepreneurs are so focused on making something that they want to sell, they forget to validate whether it's something people want to buy.
So this process is, you found a lot of creative people who are interested in developing games, but they have that disconnect with marketplace.
Yes.
And also maybe the lack of understanding, or not having the realization of how important project management is.
Well, very few people do. To me, it's like love. It's the most important thing and the least understood. Okay, in business is project management. It's just all there is to it. And so it's tough enough being an entrepreneur, but in game development, independent developers, those that aren't affiliated with the EAs and the BioWares and Naughty Dogs of the world, they they have a 95% failure rate to break even, which
I
is even
see.
much greater than just a regular entrepreneur who's just, starting a business and
I
trying to
see.
make it work.
Would that
And
be the
so,
reason why you picked the name of the company, Burnout?
so
What?
I love cars.
Oh,
I love
okay.
cars.
Right?
And you can see the smoke and
Uh,
the spinning tire,
I
right?
see.
It's a
I see.
D-pad, and
Hmm.
so it's smoking. It's horsepower, high horsepower. We create high horsepower game companies, and
So that's what it is. I
yeah.
see. How
So
many
and
people? Yeah.
we're at Burnout Game Ventures. We incubate game companies from zero to sales in 6 months or less.
And how many companies have you worked with, and how many companies are working now?
Worked with 12 companies so far, working with 5 right now,
Oh, wow.
and including BGV. But then we have an internal studio, and we have several other companies we have partnerships with, and so forth. Yeah, so one of the companies, Vector Mirror Initiative, has released 2 games in the last 4 months.
Okay.
Now the average independent game developer will generate, like, say, 5,000 units in the first 3 years.
Okay.
The game we released in July is coming up on 60,000 units.
Wow. Now, what is the break-even point for them to be able to continue to move forward?
My wallet.
No, what I mean is, how many units of sales does it need to be to break even?
Well, the thing well, obviously that depends on what the cost is
Hmm.
and the cost of goods sold is. And so I'm one thing that I learned, the one thing I learned at Rollins when I got my MBA was always challenge the status quo.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So when I created Burnout Game Ventures, I've already been working with, I'm a mentor at every incubator in town and so forth. And I've studied in accelerators and incubators, and they're just not that good. Okay. Yes, there's plenty of success. The UCF Business Incubator, compared to everybody else in the country, is quite successful. The problem is that the average incubator has a 5% success rate.
Hmm.
You know, People say, well, Y Combinator is the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. Well, they're at 7%. Okay. Yes, there are successes in LinkedIn, Dropbox, etc., but because of where they're at, and people just throw money, out the window. The thing is, though, is when you've got 80% of people or 95% of people that are failing because they just don't know what they're doing.
Right. So
And
you're
and
here to
so
help.
yeah, and this is everybody. This is nothing new. This is everybody.
Right.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, hey, it's just the way things are. It's natural. So, and
That
again,
point, recognize you need help.
yeah, so we
Right?
go back to that unnatural act, which is planning,
Planning.
right? And so, the average startup in Orlando barely lasts 8 months,
Mm.
whereas we've got the 5 companies that we're working with right now are averaging over 40 months.
Wow.
Um,
Wow, this is
and
really exciting.
and
Yeah.
so I don't want to give the wrong impression. They're still not to the point where they're self-sufficient, but at least they've been existing,
Right. Which is
growing,
you
and
got to stay in the game to win the game.
they've been learning and fine-tuning their processes, because what we understand is it's the processes that make awesome products,
Right.
right?
Now, so we do need to wrap up, and I can talk with you forever. You're a fascinating person. We barely scratched the surface, and maybe we
Sure.
can do this again another time. I would love that. And but if you were to give people a 30-second takeaway, what would that be?
A 30-second takeaway. Well, there goes 5-10 seconds right there.
There you
Um,
go, ticking. I'm just kidding.
the takeaway is that if you want to be successful in business,
Hmm.
you have to have those 4 traits: creativity, initiative, risk tolerance, and resilience in abundance. And you have to do your homework, right? And don't use the quote unquote business model canvases that everybody else in town is using, because I find them not only useless but harmful. really research and understand that your why is your number one thing you need to focus on.
I agree.
Because that's the 100%. Anchor that keeps you focused on where you're going to go, right? And these BMCs don't even ask why. Why are you doing this? So if you're not mindful of why you're doing something, then you're going to be all over the place, and you will not survive your first pivot. And the pivot
you will not survive your first pivot. Because you will not survive yourself if you don't know the why.
Right. So, understand your why, and from your why comes, what problems you're trying to solve for what target market, what your solutions are, and those features and benefits you have to spin into value. Right. Because people don't buy the features and benefits, they buy the value that And then you got to communicate with them and the right way, and you've got to know all your partnerships and who you're going to work with, who's going to help you, because no one person's an island. And just put that all together, and you can do it in 2 weeks and be done with it. And then when you finally do realize at one point in time, because we inevitably do, that the idea we had initially isn't going to work, that's when you pivot, because you see, oh, wait a minute, I'm building these tons of simulators for arcades and stuff like that, and then the military walks in and goes, hey, we like that.
I know, that's exactly what happens, right?
I pivot, right? So we still make them, we still made them for amusement, but then we pivoted to the military and commercial side as well. So, so
that's wonderful. So
without a plan, you won't be able to
be creative, be flexible. Right. Know your why. Be creative, be tenacious, plan, and be flexible. I love that.
And be flexible.
Well, Rupert, thank you. Yeah, be flexible, and thank you so much. It's always so much fun to just chat with you, and you have so much to share. And let's do this again. So today,
I'm looking forward to going dancing again.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Right.
That's right. And so now we're wrapping up our Tuesday conversation with friends, and next time maybe we'll do the interview on the dance floor. Sounds good.
Awesome.
All righty. So
thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us, and more uploads will be on different places, so be on the lookout for the announcements and follow us so you know what we're doing, and see you until the next time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.